Ryan, all yours.
Thank you, Mark. Real pleasure to jump on this afternoon and speak to you all. I'm going to give you a little bit of a whistle stop of what Preevue does, but also a bit of a wider view of visualization within the theatre industry, within West End, Broadway primarily, but also about where we're going with this. I'll share my screen and I've got a few visuals that I can flick through as I'm talking. Somebody somebody ferociously wave if you can't see any visuals on the screen. A little bit of background about Preevue. I started the company back in 2016, and at the time, the goal in my mind was using architecture, engineering, construction technology to bridge the gap between where the AEC industry is at with visualization and with BIM and with CAD, and where theatre is at. And it's very often approach of, if it doesn't fit through the door, get the chainsaw out. And actually, can we use certain technologies to be able to allow producers to work in a virtual space or sign off things in a virtual space before it becomes a problem in real life? Because it's considerably cheaper to do it in a virtual environment than it is to try and fix it and rebuild your set and change things in person. So that was the concept back in 2016. Since then, company's grown. We've got a nice team in the UK and presence on both sides of the pond. We've scanned and built digital twins of well over 150 venues and worked on some very iconic productions, including things like every worldwide production of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, Moulin Rouge, Bat Out of Hell, Come From Away, all sorts of shows. I'll quickly flick through, but there's the rather pretty list of everybody's logos that we work with. But moving on from that, and actually to backtrack a little bit and explain what laser scanning is, what a digital twin is. For those not familiar, a LiDAR scanner is, well, most of you are probably familiar with kind of doing a handheld laser measure when you're redoing your kitchen. You stand and you point a little laser measure at the wall and it tells you that it's 5 meters away. The device there that's on screen is one of our LiDAR scanners. That'll do just shy of 1 million of those measurements every second to a few mil tolerance. And that particular unit is to a 70-meter range, but they can go up to a kilometer, if not more. So we go into a space, that particular one there is the Royal Opera House, spend usually about a day scanning, and we end up with this mass of data from which the artists that we have at Preevue can rebuild a to the millimeter recreation of that space. Here's some more photos of scanning on site. I always feel like I should do a little bit of a quiz. If you can spot the venues, you get a prize at the end of it. On there's the Palladium, the Lyric in Belfast, the Alex in Birmingham. I believe top right is Grand Opera House in York, and iconically the Cambridge Theatre with all of the false pros for Matilda in the bottom right. The end result of this is a point cloud. So that is all of those measurements that we've taken on site as a kind of a cloud of data. So this 3D mass of information of all of these points measured down to the millimeter existing in this kind of 3D virtual environment. That in itself is not wonderfully useful to many people because it is just so much data, you can't really do anything with it. You know, if we hand that to a designer of a show, pretty useless. They can't do anything with that because it's simply so much data. I'll chat a little bit about the process and leave this playing in the background. I'm not sure how well it'll come through on a Zoom connection, but this here is actually the LiDAR laser scan survey of the entirety of the RSC campus in Stratford. So it was about a week scanning, well over 1 trillion measurements, and we now have the entire building and some of the separate buildings around Stratford to a few millimeters that then the team can use for a million things, never mind just actually being able to work digitally in an environment. But what is perhaps more exciting, and Mark alluded to with kind of the virtual productions that we're seeing now, this could potentially provide a creative sandbox and a springboard into doing virtual events in virtual replicas of spaces. If you know the RSC well, you may be able to recognise this here as we kind of fly through the colonnade and head out of the RST down through to the Swan Theatre. This one here is the Royal Opera House. So say it's about a day on site of LiDAR scanning, of capturing those measurements. The actual bulk of the process then comes afterwards. As I say, this massive data, pretty hard to do anything useful with. It then takes a team of artists going through and manually rebuilding things piece by piece, as you'll see momentarily as the Royal Opera House fades from a point cloud through into our 3D model of the space. You'll actually see that, there we go, so we can swap that through to our CAD file and then to our full digital twin. And that then is being used by the organization or organizations, the likes of ATG and LW, where we've gone in and we've built these digital copies of all their venues so that when shows are going into them, shows like Harry Potter, they can be working in a digital world instead of working in a real one. So why? What actually is the point? The primary one is to save money and save time. If you can fix problems in a virtual model before they happen in real life, you save a lot of time and you save a lot of money. When we're looking at the costs involved in mounting a Broadway production or a West End production, they are astronomical. The budget on something like the Harry Potter adaptation for Broadway with the full theatre venue refurbishment, I think was touching $80 million. We're talking major construction works here. And if this can be used to sign off some sight lines, sign off some design elements, and be able to fix a potential issue beforehand, the cost saving is astronomical. Never mind just the confidence of the production team in being able to say, we know exactly what we're going to be getting here. So this is kind of the process, in-house process. Everybody thinks that this is a button click job. It's not. It's entirely manual. A team of incredibly talented artists go through and actually use the point cloud as effectively a 3D dot to dot, albeit a little bit more complicated than your standard dot to dot, and go through and use that as a reference to build on top of. So we build a kind of basic version, add in some details, and then go through and add rendering and all the texture and material details built from thousands of photos that we take on site. Things like how the metal work, how shiny it is, and the everything down to the fabric of carpets and of seats and the weave of textures. And the reason that we do this, the reason we go to all this work, is that when producers and designers and creatives are then working in a virtual environment that looks spot on, they trust that it's spot on. They trust that the structure and the architecture is correct. I'll ramble a bit and leave these going in the background so there's something good to look at whilst I'm talking. But what's interesting to me, and I'm sure what's interesting to a lot of you, is then what are the implications of this going forward? Because yes, we're using this for production use, but these now provide an environment, a digital environment, where we're not many years away from being able to say, okay, great, so we've got this now. Can we put this in an engine? Can we put this into a metaverse solution and actually program content within this? Can we hold productions and host shows within it? Well, we can kind of do every element of that, because we can say, we can previs the lighting, because we do that for productions. We can build the set design, because again, that's a commonly done thing now. We can drop video in. We can put actors in, whether we do it as mocap, as motion capture, or as green screen, or as volumetric video. All are being used and all have various pros and cons. But we can do all those individual elements, so we're really not far away from being able to say, okay, so to your consumer at home or anywhere in the world, they're able to jump into this world through not sure what medium yet, whether it may be VR, it may be AR, it may just be your traditional looking at media through screens for now. But being able to jump into a virtual environment and watch content from anywhere in the world with roughly the same experience, that feels like the next natural step from this, and many organizations are very interested in it. Some of them that I've been mentioning as I've been running through these pages, they're really interested in saying, right now we're using it for production, but the next natural step for us is actually making content and making art for this space, where you suddenly go from a capacity of 1,500 to a capacity of 7 billion if you can reach the whole world with it. That's a little bit of a whistle stop on digital twins. I've probably got my email on one of these slides, or I'll drop it in the chat. If feel free to take a screenshot or drop me a note. And obviously I'm hanging around to have a bit more chat with the speed networking. But thank you very much. I hope that was interesting.
That was just downright fascinating, Ryan, and thank you so much for introducing us to that. There's a ripple of applause running around the world now, so that's fantastic. Thank you very much. you and I spoke a bit earlier, and it's not a huge leap to go from a local cinema watching La Boheme live from the Opera House, in which you're watching something live that's happening now, but it's actually on a screen. It's not that great a leap. And of course, one of the reasons we do these events this way is because we couldn't get this number of people together for an hour any other way, right? So it's much more affordable, it's much more convenient, and it's much more sustainable. So the thought that you could welcome an audience of hundreds of thousands to a live performance that's presented in that way is so exciting. Hands up if anyone's been to the ABBA virtual reality show. Love to know. No? I know it's expensive. I'm planning to go. I'm going to put it on expenses. Great. Again, Ryan, thank you so much. That was fantastic. I'm sure Ryan's popped his contact details in the chat. If not, I'm sure he will do. So if you've got any questions or would like to learn more, one thing Ryan didn't mention was the event sort of area of the business. I've seen videos on his website where you can be organizing a conference and then suddenly want to see what it would be like with 20 chairs instead of 9, and it just automatically shows you that and renders it. It's just incredible technology. Thanks again, Ryan.